give them a second to bring the slides up. So my name's Kevin, and I'm over at Psychosocial and Spiritual Services for the Cross Cancer over at the Westmount location. So we actually we're part of the Cross, and we were here at the hospital for quite some time. But a few years ago, we sort of moved over there, the shortage of space kind of thing, and we provide individual counseling, group supports for families and cancer patients, family members, and so on. And I've been there for about 3 years. And I started there as a student, actually. I did a practicum there as a master's student, and then went back. I really liked it. Did a practicum there as a doctoral student. And then after that, they said, well, hey, you've been here for a while. You kind of know what you're doing. You want to come and work for us. So they hired me on as a provisional psychologist, which means basically a newbie psychologist, a new one. In our first year of practice, we work in this supervised fashion. So I've been there in that capacity for about a year, working part-time and also working on my PhD. I do research here at the University of Alberta. And Mike asked me if I'd like to come and talk about a group that I've been running since I was a master's student, actually, at Westmount. And it's called Living Well, although we've struggled with the name, gone back and forth on many different titles for a while, but we settled on Living Well. And in essence, well, maybe we'll just start with the question, what is living well? What does that include? It certainly encompasses a lot of things, but, and I know that there are other people that will speak today on things like exercise, and you've maybe heard other talks on nutrition. Those are all important parts of living well. But I'm here to talk more about the psychological and the spiritual side of living well. What does that look like? And what can we do to enhance our well-being overall from this perspective? So there's two parts to my talk here today. It's a little bit of education in many ways. The first part, I'll be talking about the science of living well. I'll be using a model by a fellow named Martin Seligman, and just for structure. And the second part, I'd like to talk about some activities that a lot of research has shown promotes living well. So I'm actually going to give you 5 examples of activities that you can do in your daily life that will promote living well. 5 activities that have to do with increasing your positive emotions on a day-to-day basis, increasing your engagement in life, and increasing your sense of meaning and purpose in life. So first, with the science of living well. I had to put moss somewhere in the slides. I love moss. I don't know why. My wife thinks it's really weird. We go to the woods or BC or something, and I always have to get pictures of myself hugging trees covered in moss. So there's my moss slide. Living well is not certainly a new notion. I'm not going to say that this new science is something that hasn't been looked at before. In fact, it's quite ancient. I would speculate, and I'd be quite certain that cultures and civilizations have been exploring the question of living well far further than we've ever been able to document. It's been practiced around the world for thousands of years. It's been studied by philosophers and spiritual leaders. Buddhists for thousands of years have had practices that focus on living well. The Greeks were very interested in living well, the pre-Socratics, Plato and Aristotle. Aristotle was very interested in the ethics of living well. And then there was kind of a period there, it was a little bit dark and living well wasn't a big topic. And then around 1500 it came back again with Romanticism and humanism, and then later with the philosophy of existentialism. So very interesting how this has come back, and it's coming back stronger and stronger, it seems, particularly in the last 50 to 100 years. So this modern perspective that I'm going to talk about is referred to in my field as positive psychology. It's one branch of psychology now, and it's highly respected. They have massive conferences. And this study has been defined as the study of, this is one definition that I'm fond of, the study of positive experiences and positive individual traits in the institutes that facilitate their development. And I like it because we have 3 parts here: positive experiences, positive individual traits, and institutions facilitating their development. And you'll notice that that's a big theme through my talk here. Those are the three things that I'm going to talk about most. I'm just going to turn that on. Okay, so what is positive psychology in general? Well, in essence, it's a focus on a good life. What is a good life? What does it look like? Psychologists for years have been very interested in what's not a good life. Depression, anxiety, all the problems that we can experience. But within the past 20 years, there's been a big focus on what is a good life and what does it look like and what can we do to enhance our chances of having a better life. It's about optimal functioning. What does it mean when we're living in the world in a way that we're being the best us we can be, basically? It's about well-being. But I like to point out what it's not about, because I think it's important. It's not a rebirth of hedonism, first of all. This idea of hedonism is that a good life is nothing but lots and lots of fun or pleasure, lots of chocolate cake all the time. But that's not what this is about. It's not a happyology. It's not just a study of what does it look like to be happy all the time. And that's not what we're promoting. It's not a Pollyanna psychology or this idea that we should find some way to put on permanently a set of rose-colored glasses and see the world in a very nice way. And it's most certainly not a mandate to think positively. I know I've worked with cancer patients for a few years now, and many patients hear that over and over again. Stay positive and think positive. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it can become a bit much. And that's not what this is about. This is just about the science of living well and how you might be able to use it to increase your chances of having engagement and enjoyment from a day-to-day basis. And I also want to talk a little bit about happiness. This is more of the science bit. I had to have a graph in here somewhere, at least a chart of some sort. Lubomirsky has done a lot of research in this area of positive psychology and has looked at this idea of happiness or well-being and asked, what percentage of this do we really control? I mean, there's things that we can't control. And they've done these really interesting studies. In psychology, we like to do twin studies where we try to find twins that were identical and separated at birth, and then we track them down years later and we compare them on all sorts of traits. I really feel for identical twins that separated at birth. They must just constant studies. And what they've done is they've looked at these types of individuals and examined their levels of happiness overall. And they found that there's actually a very strong link between genetics and happiness overall. The theory is that we each have kind of a set point. So you know some people that are just kind of happy all the time, and they're just very pleasant people. And that seems to be that there is maybe a bit of a genetic component. And it has been estimated to be as high as 50%, although some studies say that that's a little overestimated. So that bit there, that slice of the pie, is not really in our control. So I'm not going to talk much about it. There's another bit, this piece here. Studies estimate that about 10% of our overall well-being comes from chance things happening. We happen to meet a spouse that's really supportive. We happen to find a job that we really love and get to practice it. We happen to live in a time that's prosperous or in a community that's well supportive of its members. Some of that is chance. Some of that is choice too, but some of it is chance. And we don't have much control over this little piece either. But what we do have control over is this piece here. Approximately 40% of our overall well-being and happiness, it's been estimated, comes from the activities we choose, the things we do on a day-to-day basis. Thus, living well is a task, because this is the piece of it we can control. So that's what I'm here to talk about, is this task, the task of living well, and what can we do to improve our chances of being successful at this. So Seligman, who is a very big spokesperson for this model, this is his book up here, Authentic Happiness, quite a nice little book in terms of offering a number of steps that people can examine or explore. He's proposed a model, researchers along with him, that would suggest that living well is a bit of a formula. living well is positive emotions plus engaged living plus meaningful living. And I'm going to break those down a little bit further when we get into the examples and some exercises you can try. But positive emotions, basically just feeling good in the present. Engaged living, being active in life. And meaningful living, being connected to others, to causes. And I think it's important to keep in mind that for each individual, these are not equal parts. Each individual is different. Some people emphasize positive emotions, and some people emphasize engaged living, and some people emphasize meaning and purpose in life. Everyone sort of has a different ratio of each of these three. And the amounts may vary for you even over time. So keep that in mind as we go. Part of my goal for this talk is that you think a little bit about where you derive your well-being from the most. Which of these resonates with you? Positive emotions, engaged living, or meaningful living? So part 2. How are we on time? Flying along. So living well from a positive emotions perspective, that's the first piece I'd like to talk about. What is that about? Positive emotions, one way to think about them, is it's just the way we feel on a day-to-day basis. And we have positive emotions about the present, positive emotions such as joy in the present moment. And they can be simple, such as the positive emotions we get when we have chocolate cake. Or they can be complex, such as the positive emotions we get from perhaps reading a book or learning something new. We also have positive emotions in the present about the past. So we might have positive emotions such as a sense of serenity, gratitude, contentment, or pride about the past. And we also have positive emotions about the future, things like hope, optimism, and faith. I'm going to give you an example of an exercise you could try for each of these three. So activity number 1 is called a savoring exercise. This is one that I discuss in my group with people. It's right at the beginning of the group. Savoring is this notion of slowing things down and experiencing them in a deeper way. Paying attention to what you feel and experience. So one of the probably most common examples I give people is the idea of taking a walk. Often when we take a walk, we head out to the park or something and we think, I'm going to go for a walk. And we start walking along, and where does our mind go? It's not here usually. Often you're thinking about things. This savoring idea, another term that's commonly used now is mindfulness, is a kind of slowing down and noticing things on a deeper level. So if you were to take a walk, I would encourage you instead to take a walk and notice as much as you can. Notice what you hear. Notice the sounds of the leaves. Notice birds in the distance. Notice a dog barking. Notice all the sounds. Notice the smells. This season is a great season for smells. There's all sorts of interesting scents when you go for a walk. Notice the feeling that you have of the air on your face, cool air, hot air. What does it feel like? Notice the sun or the clouds and the light and how that looks, the textures of everything. Really slow down and take a walk and pay attention in that sense, bringing yourself back as much as you can to the present moment. Your mind's going to jump around and then probably wander to things that are on your mind, but gently kind of bring it back to this savoring exercise. This is one activity that has been shown through a great deal of research to promote well-being over time. If you practice this kind of thing on a regular basis, the research suggests your overall happiness and well-being will increase quite dramatically. A variation on this that I like to use is slowing down one activity that you would normally rush, something in your daily routine. Just take extra time to do something that you would normally just hustle through. So, for example, I know that I'm the king of the 5-minute shower. I can get in and out of the shower in 5 minutes or less. And for me, if I was to do this exercise, I would focus on having a slower shower and try to really, again, in the same way with the walk, pay attention to the shower, the experience of the shower, the sounds, the scents, and so on. Or another example would be perhaps washing the dishes. Slow dishwashing can be a very good exercise. Eating breakfast slowly. Another one that someone mentioned to me once was brushing your teeth. Brush your teeth really slowly. Focus on each tooth. Take time. I've had people say that toothbrushing was never, ever as much fun until they tried this. And then it was so much fun when they tried it. After that, they couldn't wait to brush their teeth. They got their spouse involved in the teeth brushing activity. They would do it together. It was all fun. So savoring is powerful, and we know this from research, from obviously years of practice, but but also from the scientific literature. Activity number 2 has to do with positive emotions about the past. And how can we enhance our positive emotions about the past? Well, a commonly used exercise is a gratitude exercise. And a gratitude exercise is basically just taking time to reflect on something that you feel grateful about. I give you 2 variations on this exercise. The first is to think about something in your life in a bigger way. Think about just looking at your past over the years and ask yourself, what am I grateful that happened? And reflect on that. Write about it. Talk about it with others. Paint about it. Find some way to re-experience it and re-express it. This certainly will overall increase your well-being. A variation on it is this 3 good things exercise. And the 3 good things basically idea is it's a smaller version of the gratitude exercise, whereby each day you take some time, perhaps at the end of the day, to reflect on 3 things. Think of 3 things that happened in your day that you were grateful happened. And the key is they need not be big things at all. In fact, it's better if they're just little things. So you might think, Jesus, I think back on my day, I remember that when I was driving through traffic, somebody clearly slowed down to give me a spot so I could get in, and it really made my day a little bit nicer. It was nice to have that kindness from someone else. So, or when I got up this morning, my dog was there looking at me, smiling and wagging her tail. It was so nice to have that when I woke up. So thinking of all these little things that come up in your day, and each day do this. There's a professor I know at the university who practices this kind of exercise, or was practicing it for a while. And he said what happened for him over time was very interesting, in that he found he no longer needed to do it at the end of the day because he started doing it during the day. He started noticing while it was happening. And he would say to himself, this is one of those things I'm going to be grateful for at the end of the day. So he would run into a friend that he didn't expect to see, and he'd chat with them for a few minutes, and then at the end he'd comment, this was one of my gratitudes for the day. It was great to see you, So this is a very important thing, to exercise gratitude in the short term and in the long term. So the third activity has to do with optimism and hope about the future. And this can be a tricky one. Certainly with cancer, there's so much uncertainty. And optimism often for some might hinge on big things. Like, I'll be happy when I get through this phase of treatment. Or I'll be happy when I get through my next follow-up. And I would suggest that that may be true, but the research also says on this kind of thing that the big things that we're hopeful for don't always give us the satisfaction we think that they will. So think about things like, I'll be happy when I get the mortgage paid off, or I'll be happy when I finish my degree. Certainly you're happy, certainly it gives you a boost, but it doesn't last in the way that you expect that it might. It doesn't give you quite what you thought it would give you. So Lubomirsky suggests this neat little activity, which is focus on little and very little optimisms. Focus on cultivating optimisms on small things, in and around small things. So you might, for example, think about the weekend and say, I hope that there's some sunshine this weekend and I get to go for a nice walk. Or you might think about, I hope I get to visit with family next weekend and see my grandkids. Or I hope tomorrow when I get up that the coffee is just going to taste so excellent because I'm going to savor it. So focusing on little optimisms can be very effective because there's an ample supply of them and you can do it every day and you get a little reward out of them each time. So that's positive emotions. And the research on positive emotions says that yes, people get a lot out of positive emotions, these kinds of things. These are just a few examples. There's lots and lots. But the research also suggests that in and around positive emotions, we don't get long-standing returns from them. We have to keep doing them all the time to get something out of them. So chocolate cake is really good, but if you have chocolate cake every day, it sort of, after a while, you habituate to it. It's not so good anymore. You got to find something else that's really good to eat, a different kind of dessert, and you got to keep that supply of positive emotions coming. Because it kind of drops off over time, what you get from it. But engaged living, and in particular meaningful living, the research shows that people get something from it in a much longer, long-term way. What you get from it is not just what you feel today, here and now, but 3 months from now, you're still likely to feel good because of these activities. So I'll talk more on that as we go along. So the first one I want to talk about is engaged living. And engaged living in this model mostly focuses on knowing what your strengths are and using them every day, or as frequently as you can, is the idea, in essence. So engaged living is about being involved in the world and doing something. It doesn't have to be for big organizations or for big causes. It can be for just things that you love to do. So if you love working on your car in the garage and you're good at it, then using that skill is being involved in engaged life, engaged living. Now I'm going to talk about character strengths because often when the literature talks about engaged living, it also talks about character strengths. There's been quite a few studies of character, looking at virtues and character through time in different cultures, in different historical epochs, through religion and politics and philosophy and education and spiritual writing and so on. And what they've done is they kind of distilled a short list of character strengths that seem to be universal around the world. And they've categorized them into 6 categories. And these are them here. 6 categories: wisdom and knowledge, courage, love, justice, temperance, and transcendence. And under each of those, you see these different descriptors. Those are the character strengths: creativity, judgment, curiosity. Incidentally, I looked it up, and there was a study done, I can't remember the year, it was within the last few years, that found that kindness is actually the most common character strength around the world. Isn't that kind of cool? Yeah. So in any case, engaged living is about knowing what your character strengths are and finding a way to use them on a daily basis, and maybe even finding ways to use them in new ways. There's a survey online that you could do. It's a free survey. It's called viame.org. That's the website, viame.org. They're the people who have done all this research, and they have their questionnaire available online for people to use for free. It's long. It's like 240 questions, so it's not brief. It'll take a while if you decide to do it. But if you do decide to go ahead and do it, they'll give you a bit of a printout on what your top character strengths are. And I think that this is very useful information in terms of deciding how you can increase your engaged living. Because activity 4 is to come to understand your signature strengths, or your top 5, let's say, strengths. What character strengths are defining of you? And then find a way to use them in a new way. So an example I would give is, if your strength is kindness, as is common around the world, find a way to express kindness in a new situation or in a new way or more frequently. The trick is, we have all these character strengths here. So engaged living isn't about figuring out what your bottom 5 are and getting better at it. It's about figuring out what your top 5 are and getting better at those, even better on top of how good you are already at them. So again, if kindness is your top strength, then how can you express it in even more ways, in even more situations? There's a really good book that a patient once recommended to me, and now I recommend commonly, by Piero Ferrucchi. I don't know if I spelled it right, but this is the book here, The Power of Kindness. Very lovely little kind of book. You can read a chapter and put it away and then pull it out again. It's very nice. And he talks about this. How can we increase our kindness overall? Very nice little book. Or, let's say your strength is a love of learning. Well, what could you do to pursue your interests, interests that you've always had but never had a chance to pursue? How could you increase your engagement in your love of learning? So, for those of you who are finding this interesting and who have a love of learning, you're doing just that right now, right? You're here and now exercising your love of learning. So you're probably sort of content. So living well also is about meaningful living. And this one is a bit more complex, and it's not going to be easy for me to compress it here, but I'll do my best. Meaningful living is about participating in things bigger than yourself. It's about affiliation, giving or contributing to something that you believe in, and investing in meaningful relationships. I'd say these two here, this one here, participating in something larger than yourself and investing in meaningful relationships, these seem to be the most defining of what a meaningful life is for people. And it can be either or of those. Basically, in brief, it's helping to make some part of the world better. That's what it's really about. So the activity that I would suggest for you here is to do just that. Give to something larger than you, larger than yourself. And one way to do that is to consider organizations that promote or enable the values, the outcomes that you value. So groups out there that are doing things that you like. And when I talk about organizations, sometimes the term institutions is used. I'm thinking of things like family, community, social groups, schools, your city, your clubs, your hospital, your religious organizations. All of these are institutes or organizations that promote well-being. So finding a way to get involved and do something with one that you feel is an important one is very likely to increase your overall life satisfaction. Dedicate some time to making such an organization better. So I just want to conclude, reaching the end of my little talk, by noting that my assumption here throughout all of this, and even at the beginning when I first started this group on living well, my assumption is that living well is not it's not a task that ends with a cancer diagnosis or with cancer treatment or in life afterwards, in cancer survivorship. It's true that various factors may limit what you can do. You may experience fatigue or pain or worry, but I firmly believe that they need not stop you from finding small ways to attend to the task of living well. And that's my talk.